Okay, we're about ready to get started, everybody think? Close enough? All right, at this time, I will call the regular meeting of the Board of Adjustments and Appeals for April 27th to order. First item, please stand with me as we pledge allegiance to the flag. Thank you. You may be seated. Roll call, please.
Chairman Taylor.
Here.
Vice Chairman Smith Rodriguez. Here. Member Van Deven. Here. Member Wheelis.
Here.
Alternate Member Mandernack.
Here.
All right, thank you for being on board as an alternate online. Appreciate that. So we have a full quorum. Looking at the minutes for the March 3rd minutes, were there any correction, addition that anyone saw to? Nothing but shaking of heads. Do I have a motion to approve the minutes, please?
So moved.
Second motion.
All right, moved and seconded. All those in favor, please state by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, motion carries. Thank you. All persons who anticipate speaking on a public hearing item must fill out an oath card to be heard on that agenda item and sign the oath contained thereon. These cards are located on the table near the entrance to the council chamber, or maybe a town obtained recording secretary. This meeting will be conducted in accordance with procedures adopted in Resolution number 24-1997. Those speaking in favor of a request will be heard first. Those opposed will be heard second, and those who wish to make a public comment on an item will speak third. The applicant may make a brief rebuttal if necessary. A representative for either side, for or against, may cross-examine a witness. Anyone who speaks is considered a witness. If you have photographs, sketches, or documents that you desire permission to consider, they must be admitted into evidence and will be retained by the city. Please submit such exhibits to the recording secretary. So everybody that's going to speak has filled out a little card tonight, hopefully. If not, now's the time to do that. The item you wish to speak on. Staff have the item for tonight advertised.
Yes.
You have any members had a reason to visit the sites or spoken to any members of the public regarding the item to be reviewed this evening?
No.
Thank you. Yes, all right. Hearing no, and myself is a no. So we will get on. No consent agenda. Our old business, we do have 2 new business items to consider tonight. And one is a hearing request on variance 11-2022, 1784 Crossbill Drive. So staff, would you bring us up to date on what?
This case, this is not an advertised public hearing. This is just a request for you to consider allowing this application to be reheard again. So your last meeting, this application was considered by you and was denied. Per section 34-261A of the code, any applicant whose request for a variance has been denied may apply for a rehearing of the code. That's what the code says right now. A request for a rehearing was submitted to the city on April 7th in time by the deadline before the close of business of that day. Casey Grenville is the applicant, and he submitted a letter according to the code requirements. I'll just read for the record real quick what those requirements are. A request for rehearing must be submitted within 15 days of the denial. A timely filed request for rehearing will be heard by the board at its next regularly scheduled meeting, which is today. The rehearing will be for the sole purpose of deciding whether or not the previously denied variance should be reheard. The affirmative vote of 4 members of the board shall be necessary to grant or approve a rehearing request. If the request for rehearing is denied, the previous decision of the board shall be final. If the request for a hearing is granted, the original application for variance shall be rescheduled for a public hearing at the next regularly scheduled meeting of the board, which is May 25th. So if it is firm, that's that date, that hearing will be advertised for then, and then you'll make your decision on that, on this case. Your decision tonight is to consider the evidence that the applicant has provided, the letter that they submitted, which is on page 12 of your packet, asking for this request, and for you to decide whether it merits a rehearing. With that, I'll try to answer any questions you have about this. I believe Mr. Grenville is here, or no, I don't see him.
I noticed in his letter, he made much more detailed analysis of what he wanted to build. Anticipated a big porch all the way across the whole complex.
He spoke over the phone with me as part of his request for this rehearing that he thought that the evidence that he provided with the original application wasn't sufficient, and he wanted to clarify, have an opportunity to clarify again what specifically he's requesting. So he did provide a little bit of some illustrations in addition to this letter to illustrate what he is attempting to do. He indicated to me that he believes that the encroachment is not as significant as was indicated during the hearing back last month.
All right. I spoke to staff. We can make some. Care to? Or
I reviewed the letter that was submitted on page 12, I think 13 and 14, maybe. It was even further, down to 15. I recall the hearing, and I looked at the brief minutes that we had on it. Interesting, because in a quasi-judicial hearing, there's not sufficient case law to tell us what really should be considered. It's really him saying, I have more things to say that I should have said. But even in looking at these things that are listed here, the reason it was denied by this board, which I know that I was one of those people who denied the request, reflects in his paragraph 2 regarding the special conditions and circumstances of the property, and 8. Oh, and 5.
give me a page number, please.
On page 12 and 13. We were aware at the hearing that it was 1 foot 8 inches that was being requested. What they were choosing to do with that is of no significance to this board. I understand reading this request for a rehearing that is for an outdoor kitchen, but I believe it was Dr. Beckles that also denied the request, citing what's marked here on page 13 as paragraph 5, that it's not the minimum variance needed to produce reasonable use of the land. It's reasonable use of the land, period. It's not reasonable use of the land pursuant to what they want to do with it, such as installing a kitchen on the porch. So on that basis that they've highlighted in this paragraph very intently what they're trying to do, I think it would still be denied that it's the reasonable use of the land is being met. And I denied it that there are no special circumstances of this land. That plot was designed specifically for that particular neighborhood, and it was a unique shape. They change some setbacks and then put a whole bunch of more conservation area elsewhere to meet these things. So while this particular property might have a unique set of, or this particular development has a unique set of circumstances, the fact that some of the neighbors have pools or some of the neighbors have different setbacks, I don't think there are special circumstances of this land that would justify this use. And those are the two reasons for which it was denied. Reading the explanation under those two reasons, I do not feel that it would change the outcome of the previous decision. And I know Dr. Beckles is not here, and she was the other individual who denied that request. In sum, I do not believe that the rehearing should be granted.
I just have a comment. I noticed that in the PD, the planned development, that he could build an outdoor kitchen in the backyard, in the rear, as long as it's detached, because he's allowed another 10 feet. We never even discussed that. Felt like if maybe we would have discussed that and had given him an alternative, that he could still do his outdoor kitchen, just has to be detached. He has an extra 10 feet that he could use in the rear.
And I understand that. However, it's not this board's responsibility to educate people on their alternative options. It's our responsibility to see if the request for the variance from the code meets certain criteria. And even if we had known that or were able to provide additional information then, that would have been pleasant. It would have been nice of us to do so, but he can still gain that information and do what he needs to do elsewhere. I don't think it would have influenced my decision, and I know I was one. That's why I say me. I know the three of you that I'm sitting with had granted the variance, so I'm not sure. I know where you all stand on what your original request would have been.
One more comment. Section 34226, I feel like paragraph D, literal interpretation of the provisions of the ordinance would deprive the applicant of rights commonly enjoyed by other properties in the same zoning district under the same ordinance. In his application for rehearing, he reiterates that he doesn't have the same privileges that his neighbors have. Now, there may be some houses around the area, because I think there are 70 homes that are shaped like his. I don't know if they have anything going on in their rear, but I just feel like he's being deprived of his rights that are enjoyed by other people that are neighbors of his from the same zoning district. That was my my feeling.
When we look at the shape of the lot, convex frontage, it's convex to a much larger degree, 8 inches that he's requesting. Probably front line moves these 3. So if that line were equal, straight line to a radius, he would be well within. The house would have been set forward far enough to build that. On the other hand, people with radius moving in the other direction out gain an extra 3 or 4 feet relative to front yards. It's not equal. That's a unique characteristic of this creation.
I too agree with what you just said, but I also took into the fact that it does not back up. This has been a back-to-back situation. An existing property directly behind this property that would infringe upon their rights. I personally did with it, conservation land. This, that would be such an issue, granted this particular applicant unreasonable advantages. So what is before us tonight is to either vote, have a motion, vote, and it has to be carried 4-1. Be here at the next meeting. Not deciding tonight. I'm correct, Council.
That's correct.
Yeah, that's the key point that comes to mind for me is, we give him another crack at this or not.
That would be correct.
I have a question for either staff or council. Is there guidance elsewhere in the code that, aside from Mr. Parrish, your comments regarding looking at the letter, is that the only thing that we are looking at to consider whether a rehearing is appropriate, or are there other criteria that need to be considered?
I believe I added the language from the code to your agenda. So you can read it for what it says. It's page 8, starts on page 18 of your package, 18 and 19. And talks about the Board of Adjustment.
Go back up.
I'm
The
sorry.
grounds.
Yeah, paragraph 4, grounds.
There we
okay.
go. Paragraph 4, yes.
Right, okay, so that's what I was looking for earlier. I don't know how I missed that. Okay, even better. So paragraph 4, when we're looking at the grounds, newly discovered evidence which was not available had someone still been doing their due diligence. He admits in his letter starting on page 12 that his friend was doing this. He thought it was a simple process. Now he's been here and now he wants to provide more evidence. All that evidence was available at the time of that hearing. Moving on to paragraph B, the original decision was based on an erroneous interpretation or conclusion of law. We had an appropriate discussion, have differences of opinion. That is why we are different members of the board. So there wasn't an erroneous interpretation or conclusion of law. It was simply a difference of opinion based upon our own interpretations. And regarding paragraph C, the original decision was based upon fraud, misrepresentation, or other misconduct of a person other than the applicant. That's not been alleged or indicated in his request. So looking at the grounds right there, which specifically say a request for rehearing cannot be granted unless one or more of the following grounds are shown to exist. I don't think any of those grounds are shown to exist. And I think the rehearing should be denied.
Chairman, grounds 4B is actually very subjective. It's coming on of the for their own. Some people find we may have.
Right?
I'd like to make.
Got a motion to rehear the item again at our next meeting. I have a second.
Second.
I second it.
Very good. All right, may we have a roll call vote, please?
Chairman Taylor?
Yes?
Vice Chairman Smith Rodriguez?
No.
Member Van Deven?
Yes.
Member Wheelis?
Yes.
Alternate Member Mandernack?
Yes.
Do have a 4 vote during this item again. Correct?
Correct.
All right, thank you.
The next item starts on page 61.
Pages. computer had a very hard time downloading this. Okay, next item, variance number 13-2022. Physical address being 4244 South Washington Avenue. Lightness, staff.
So again, on page 61 of your packet begins the agenda cover sheet. The staff report begins on page 63 of your packet. There were several variance requests that were submitted with the original application. I'm looking at page 63 of your packet right now. Several of them were withdrawn based on some discussion back and forth with the applicant as to what is actually necessary to receive a variance, and they've actually made some adjustments, which I'll point out as well, which negated the need for those original variance requests. So right now, they are left with these following specific variance requests. One is to amend or reduce the landscape buffer or yard buffer requirement along the east part of the parcel that faces US 1. Let me back up. This parcel is actually broken up. It's bisected by US 1. There's another piece of it along the water, but that's not subject to the variances here. The applicant's requesting to try and put a restaurant here, and with all the requirements of that restaurant, it's requiring them to seek these variances. So the first one I just already mentioned is to reduce the landscape buffer adjacent to US 1 on the east side of the property. There is also a request to reduce the 20-foot buffer that's required on the south boundary of the property, and also to reduce the 10-foot landscape buffer that is required on the north boundary. So the code specifically says that you're supposed to have a 20-foot landscape buffer along public rights-of-way, and this property this portion of the property has fronts three right-of-ways. And then the north part of the property is adjacent to a commercial piece of property, so therefore it's only required to have a 10-foot landscape buffer. So the applicant is requesting to reduce the buffers on the north, east, and south side, and I'll point that out to you again on a map in this packet. Another variance request that the applicant is asking for is to eliminate actually the building perimeter landscaping requirement. Code requires a 5-foot landscape strip basically around the building itself. And there are 3 sides where a building landscaping is required, and the applicant's requesting to vacate those or eliminate those. I'll explain in a moment where we believe it may be justified for a couple of those sides, but one side there could be an adjustment. Let me just make sure I covered all of them. There's buffers. I believe that's it. Okay, so let me go on to the brief description in the staff report. On page 64 of your packet, I'll just briefly list the variance requirements. You have to consider whether there's special conditions in the property. Special circumstances do not result from the property owner. Granting a variance will not confer some special privilege on this property owner. The literal interpretation of the code won't deprive the property owner of their rights of use of the property. The variance granted or the minimum. The variance granted will preserve the spirit of the ordinance, and granting the variance, public safety and welfare must be assured. The applicant is proposing to put a restaurant which is consistent with the zoning on the property. So on page 65 of your packet, I'll just briefly go through the analysis here. So the property is just a little more than half an acre. It's located at 4244 South Washington Avenue. The parcel itself is considered to be non-conforming. Code defines frontages to be the shortest width of a lot. So US 1 is the arterial, so that will be considered to be the front. The road on the south side is considered to be a collector, and the road on the west side is considered to be a local road. So in this case, because this property has 3 frontages, we're going to look at US 1 as a front, and the width of that front is less than what is required in that zoning district, which is the Indian River City neighborhood commercial zoning district. I'll point out exactly, specifically what that width is. So we consider this to be already a non-conforming lot. The applicant is proposing to put a 6,500 square foot 2,700 square foot restaurant. This should not be correct. 6,500 square foot outdoor seating area. It's a lot less than that. I'll point that out. There are 18 parking spaces. There's driveways, there's stormwater facilities, landscaping would be required. With all those requirements of the size of the restaurant and the outdoor seating that they're proposing, it requires all the parking and stormwater. Some of that is going to be encroaching into those 20-foot landscape buffers, which I'll point out to you on the map. And then again, they're asking for building relief from the building perimeter landscaping requirements. They are putting an outdoor seating area on the east side of the proposed restaurant facing US 1. Then on the west side of the restaurant, there will be the parking lot. So I'll just briefly state here at the bottom of page 65, some of the variance requests appear to be justified based on the non-conforming width and narrowness of the parcel. Commercial structure is required to provide a minimum number of 10-foot wide parking spaces, 15-foot wide landscape islands, 5-foot wide building perimeter landscaping, 10-foot wide landscape yard on the north boundary, and 20 feet on the east and south boundaries. In addition, a stormwater system is required to treat runoff from the new development. So the staff considers this property to be very tight. The applicant will request, most likely, relief in the way of waivers from the city's development review committee through the site plan process from the 10-foot width requirements for parking spaces and the landscape islands. But that's a different process. It's not something that's being specifically asked of you this evening. The recommendation, staff believe that we couldn't find a justification to eliminate the building perimeter landscaping on the west side of the building, and I'll point that out. There appears to be enough space to plant shrubs on the west side of the building. We thought that there was justification to approve the request to eliminate the building perimeter landscaping on the east side of the building to accommodate the outdoor seating area. The outdoor seating area would be adjacent to an already required landscape buffer along US 1. We thought there's justification to approve the request to eliminate the building perimeter landscaping on the south side of the building on condition that shrubs be planted on the south side of the sidewalk. I'll point that out as well. And then finally, we thought that there's justification to approve the perimeter landscape buffer encroachment requests on the north, an encroachment of 5 feet, leaving a 5-foot landscape buffer. An encroachment of 10 feet into the east buffer, leaving a 10-foot remaining buffer. And 10 feet into the south buffer, leaving a 10-foot remaining buffer. Additionally, the board may consider approving the variances to condition the administrative waivers are approved. And so I've already mentioned that they're going to be seeking waivers to the width of the parking spaces and landscape islands. So I'm going to point you to the illustration that was submitted to us by the applicant. It's on page 75 of your packet, and you may have to zoom out a little bit. So you can see on the illustration there, the new building, approximately 2,700 square feet. On the east side of it, between the building and US 1, there will be an outdoor seating area, and then there will be a remaining 10-foot landscape buffer there along US 1. West of this building, you will see the parking lot. The applicant is going to request waivers to reduce the width of those spaces through the Development Review Committee at a later stage in order to make sure that this parking lot does not encroach into the west landscape buffer. And also potentially request waivers to the width of landscape islands. The building and parking lot are proposed to be encroaching into the 10-foot landscape, or a portion of the parking lot will be encroaching into the 10-foot landscape buffer required on the north property boundary. If the variance is approved, the remaining landscape buffer will be 5 feet. On the south side of the property, along Knox McRae Drive, again, that's a collector road. The applicant is proposing to have some items that are encroaching into the 20-foot landscape buffer. And And so the applicant is asking for a landscape buffer of only 10 feet. And there is an illustration that was provided to us, I'm not sure if it's in the packet here, that shows proposed drainage facilities to be in there. That is something that's going to have to be requested at a later stage through an administrative process or waiver process, either through the Development Review Committee or by the administrator. And it has to be justified. That's not being requested of you specifically this evening. It was originally, that was withdrawn because of that a particular other option. So they'll deal with that during the site plan process. The building perimeter landscaping. So you can see on the three sides, the applicant is requesting to eliminate the building perimeter landscaping on the west, south, and east sides of the building. East side, we understand that because it's going to be an outdoor seating area. And it will be adjacent to an already required 10-foot landscape buffer along US 1. On the south side of the proposed building, the applicant is proposing to put a sidewalk adjacent to the building itself. We believe the landscaping, at least shrubs, can be on the south side of that sidewalk at least. The applicant is also requesting to eliminate the building perimeter landscaping on the west side of the building. We believe there could be some shrubbery there at least planted between the proposed sidewalk and the building wall. The applicant also, during our discussions back and forth as to we can reduce some of these variances and what can be considered as a waiver, also amended the location of where the dumpster is going to be. On page 93 of your packet, when they submitted the application to us, we identified potentially additional variances they're probably going to need to get that were not included in the original application, such as the location of the dumpster was going to be encroaching into one of the buffers and also facing a right-of-way and not screened appropriately, things of that nature. And so the applicant has adjusted the location of where that dumpster will be, and we believe that they are not requiring variances now based on this amendment. Again, all of this will be reviewed through the site plan process. I did include the discussions back and forth with the applicant. Page 94 through 96, 7 of your packet, there were emails that we were back and forth where we identified additional variances, here are the options, waivers, or whatnot. And they responded in kind with, here, we're going to make these changes. And so based on that information, that's why we are left with the particular variances that are being requested of you tonight only. And again, building perimeter, landscaping, and encroachments into the north, east, south buffers. With that, I'll try and answer any questions you have. I did include here in your packet the code itself related to the buffers so page 76, I included the excerpt, the IRC or CN. This is the Indian River City Neighborhood Commercial Zoning District Development Standards. But the buffer requirements begin on page 86 of your packet. So I included an excerpt of the city's buffer requirements, perimeter buffer requirements there. So you can see on page 86 of your packet, you'll see a table there. If the commercial development is adjacent to a public right-of-way, it requires a B-type buffer. And further down in the code, you'll see that equates to a 20-foot landscape buffer. So they're asking for relief from that. You'll also see that a commercial development adjacent to another commercial development, this is relevant to the north boundary, requires a type A buffer. And when you look at that table further below on page 88, you'll see that a type A buffer requires a 10-foot, equates to a 10-foot wide buffer. So they're asking for some relief for that as well. So with that, I'll try and answer any questions you have about this. Sitchahib is the applicant's representative on this, and I'm sure he'll be able to answer any questions about what's being proposed as well.
Okay, going back to that map, that was on page.
The illustration of the property and the proposed development, is that what you're referring to? It's page 76, or 5 rather, of your packet? 75?
75, yes, that's. But staff's that number, number one. Staff's position that 5-foot buffer sidewalk building?
So the code requires a 5-foot built landscape strip around the building. That's a perimeter landscape strip. The applicant is requesting to have it completely eliminated. We looked at it and thought it still could be adhered to partially, at least on the west side of the property, of the building. Landscaping could be planted on the south side of the sidewalk on the south side of the building. And on the east side of the building, we didn't see it necessary because there's already a landscape buffer between the proposed outdoor seating area and US 1.
So this building didn't necessarily include or show a covering over the area?
I didn't see, I don't have that information. The applicant could probably answer that.
All right, good. Other questions? All right, I hear no other questions. So at this time, we'll open it up for public hearing. And our first card, please.
Sid Shahab.
Welcome. Would you please join us? Give us your name and address for the record, please, sir.
Yes, sir. Good evening to you. My name is Sid Shahayeb. I'm with Consulting Civil Engineers. And this is a project probably everybody is familiar with. Maybe they passed by the site plenty of times. Okay, and it's located at the northwest corner of Knox McRae and US 1. As Mr. Pierce said, the site is fronting 3 streets, which increases the amount of buffers that is required all the way around, which reduces the amount of developable site. And this site is a little bit narrow, too. And the site amenities, before I go into that, Brad mentioned to you on page 76, there is a sketch of improvement for Indian River City. And basically, this is a sketch that the city has for development. And you will notice that the setback for the building is completely different than the buffer required for the landscape. Normally, it's the opposite. It's like the building controls and the landscape buffer comes after. But if you look at that, you look at the setback, from each of the side streets, the difference, if you look at 76, that's what it shows. Okay? Page 76 of your package.
That's correct. You'll see that on page 76, the IRC and zoning district building setbacks are different from the landscape buffer requirements. They're less stringent.
Now, one thing I want to say that all of these hurdles that we have to go through, this creates a big hardship on the on developing this property, and so the area of a stormwater, it's going to be stormwater that's going to utilize some low impact development, which is a little bit expensive too. There isn't any room for stormwater per se to put it within the retention pond, a big area to retention pond. So that would be an issue. We have to put it underground. The site will be an eye opener for people coming into the city from the south too. And it's for and basically we are under the gun to get this project going because the existing Valentino's restaurant is shutting down. The building is shutting down, the whole building. So that's one of the reasons that we are under pressure to get this going too. So the low impact development, the expense of the development, that's a big hurdle, for them. And, we reviewed the comments from the city staff. The only comment that I would say we would like to work with is on the south side, on the west side of the building. And we agree with all their recommendation, by the way. But on the west side of the building, we have about 10 feet between the edge of pavement and the building. So we would like some flexibility there. So I think the staff will work with us because there might be doors in there. They may be, getting into the building. Right now, we have just a rectangular block. So the building doors may be in that location. So we can't have just a solid landscape buffer on the west side of the building. So it could be like integrated into that 10 feet. That shouldn't be a problem. On the west side of the building. Now, on the north side of the site, the only setback that we are asking for is next to the building because we want to access the building from the back, so we may have to put a sidewalk to get back there. So that could be part of the buffer. So if that's allowed, we probably don't need that encroachment. But the 5 feet setback, I think, we're going to keep it a little bit bigger than that, but right now, that's what we're asking for in order to make the site work. Other than that, we agree with the staff recommendation, and we don't have any problems with it.
So back to my question, we really don't have other than a door on the west side, you really don't have the building itself
Yeah.
plotted out or drawn up yet.
No, we haven't drawn that out yet.
But your contention right now is the entrance would be to the parking lot so that people can go in and not have to circle the building or anything of that nature.
Right. But the door may be like at the corner, and then, the building footprints may not change, but the building corner may be truncated in order to open the door or have like a door, basically diagonal to each other where, you have like an opening in the corner of the building.
Where would this underground retention be located?
Right under the parking lot.
The whole
We would
parking lot, or?
we would use some pervious concrete on the south side of the property and put some, we do that a lot today. It's called storm tech chambers, basically. We put them underground. And we would like to utilize, that's what Brad was talking about, the part of the south side. We're going to keep a 10-foot landscape buffer, but the other part of it is we have a small area where we can incorporate some, stormwater retention within that area. And then from that goes underneath the parking lot. And between the two, we will have a very good stormwater management system.
Answers my questions. Anyone else have a question? Presentation. Or comment? Or question for architect? No? All right. Well, thank you very much, sir.
Thank you.
Do appreciate it.
Thank you.
Do we have another card?
Yes, John Betts.
Welcome, Mr. Betts. If you give your name and address for the record, please.
That's 205 Knox for Christ, my first meeting ever. So I live on that corner, and like I said, there's many 100-foot plus pines on that. And as through the years I've lived there, I've watched osprey like attempting to build a nest. And over the years, now they've finally been successful. And here within the past month or so, there is a nest up there. She's actively sitting on her eggs. I watch them constantly. I've talked with the fishing game, whatever, and they said they were protected. They would need to get some special permit because there's, like I said, they've got tags on all those pines to come out, or they can't go nothing there. So that was my just biggest concern is that before they do anything, the bird, let the bird finish their business or whatever, like I said, because I believe they're protected under Florida, if I'm not mistaken, if there is a nest in the egg or young in the egg, or in the nest. So,
Thank you for expressing that. Do we have any other cards, please?
No, sir.
We'll give it to her. And would you please give your name and address for the record?
Yep, Jeannie Forte, and I live at 4370 Mount Vernon Avenue, which is in the Indian River City Historical District there. And I'm a customer of Valentino's, and I am just wanting to speak very highly of their service to the community for the last 41 years. And living in the neighborhood, I would be really looking forward to having them build in that area. Pardon me. Practically raised my kids at that restaurant, so neither here nor there, but to me it was important. And since there's so much going on at the Sears Town Mall, and they're actually having to leave there, and they own that property, I'm 100% in favor of them setting up their restaurant. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Do we have any other cards to be presented?
No, sir.
All right. In that case, we'll close it to public hearing. Bring it back to the motion. Questions of staff might have, or comments?
One question for staff. In granting a variance, are we actually reducing the required landscaping number of plants?
No, you'll see in one of the conditions here, number 4, I'm going to refer you back to page 66 of your packet and those recommendations. So we are recommending that we believe there's a justification to reduce the buffers down, but on condition that all required vegetation be planted per the code, including overstory and understory trees and shrubs. That's number 4 on page 66 of your packet. The applicant did indicate that they will adhere to that according to per the email that we received, and I attached in here. I believe it says that, and maybe the applicant can confirm that they can still do that. But even with a 10-foot line deep buffer or a 5-foot one, number of vegetation still remains the same. I also do want to point out too, for benefit of the applicant, all the requests or the suggestions to them that we made that, well, you have the option of, instead of asking for a variance to, for example, width of a landscape island or width of a parking space or allowing drainage inside a buffer, those can be addressed through an administrative process, but an appeal of those decisions, if they're not favorable to the applicant, do come back to you. So they do have that option. But that can be determined and figure out whether that really is necessary through the site plan process. So my understanding, that's how they agreed to do that. And so that's why some of those items were withdrawn. So that's what you have here right now is just what's left of those variance requests.
Okay. Thank you for that clarification. Other questions? All right. Do I have a motion? Consider.
Council, the west side, well, the 3 building perimeters, and then the 1 landscape yard, are those needing to be addressed separately? Yes.
Clarify, I put these in here based on our recommendations. If you want to take number 4 and break it out into 3 or different approvals or denials and actions, you can do that, as you have that option.
So essentially, and the recommendation would be regarding two sides of the building perimeter to eliminate that request. The west side sounds like the applicant is in agreement with it, subject to the practicality of opening and closing doors, which would certainly not require shrubs to be in front of it anyway. Okay, so those three and then the side. All right. Is somebody else going to move or no? Okay. All right. Regarding variance 13-2022. I move to eliminate the building perimeter landscaping on the east and south sides of the building on the condition that shrubs be planted on the south side of the sidewalk on the south side of the building.
Okay, so we're breaking this down into parts.
I see, based on my understanding of the motion, is you're making a motion to approve number 2 and 3 on page 66 with those conditions that we recommended.
Yes.
Okay.
I lumped it together because it's both eliminating a building perimeter of two sides. Council, is that okay?
That's fine.
Okay.
I'll second the motion.
Got a motion and a second. Any other discussion? May we have roll call, please?
Member Van Deven?
Yes.
Member Wheelis?
Yes.
Alternate Member Mandernack?
Yes.
Chairman Taylor?
Yes?
Vice Chairman Smith Rodriguez?
Yes. Regarding variance 13-2022, I move to deny the request to eliminate the building perimeter on the west side of the building.
Is there a second?
I'll second the motion.
Got a motion and a second. May we have roll call, please?
Member Wheelis?
Yes.
Alternate Member Mandernack?
Yes.
Chairman Taylor?
Yes?
Alternate Member, or Vice Chairman Smith Rodriguez? Member Van Deven?
Yes.
Believe section, is that correct?
Correct. Number 4 is the remaining. So you have the choice of clumping it together as I've recommended or separating it out into different actions.
Regarding variance 13-2022, I move to approve the perimeter landscape yard buffers on the north boundary of 5 feet east and south side of the property 10 feet on the condition that all required vegetation be planted per the code, including overstory and understory trees and shrubs.
Have a motion? Do I have a second?
I'll second the motion.
Very good. Any discussion? Seeing none, may we have roll call, please?
Vice Chairman Smith Rodriguez? Member Van Deven?
Yes.
Member Wheelis?
Yes.
Alternate Member Mandernack?
Yes.
Chairman Taylor?
Yes. All right. 3 out of 4. Very much. That takes care of all that, right? Discussion. Here we go. Okay, at this time, that ends our new business. Do we have any petitions or requests from the public? And, whoop, looking around for? All right. Reports. We have staff enlighten us with something or anything new?
At your next meeting, the item that you approved to rehear is your only item.
At this time.
Correct.
Closing. When is that close?
May 25th is the date.
I know, but when does?
Oh, the deadline to advertise very quickly. Very quick. Yeah, we have to turn it around
Right.
immediately.
Okay. All right. Any other reports? You're smiling. Huh? Make no reports. All right.
We will most likely lose Chelsea at the for a while.
No, we won't lose her.
You'll be graced with the presence of Richard Broom.
All right, members, anything to enlighten? Say anything? And for one time, I don't have to sit and beg for more people to join the board. We're full, right? Yay! So we're in good shape. Well, seeing nothing else, we'll call for a motion to adjourn. And all in favor, say aye. Aye. All right. Thank you.
See y'all later.